People who never join social hype often show a strong sense of internal autonomy that guides their decisions more than external approval. Their choices tend to emerge from personal values, long reflection, and an inner compass that feels stable even when the social environment becomes loud or demanding. Instead of feeling pulled by trends, they experience a sense of grounding that allows them to observe collective excitement without being absorbed by it. This autonomy is not necessarily rebellious, but rather quietly self-directed. A key psychological feature in these individuals is a well-defined identity that does not rely heavily on social mirroring. They usually know who they are, what they enjoy, and what they believe in, independent of what is currently popular. Because of this clarity, social hype often feels irrelevant or superficial to them. They may appreciate trends intellectually while feeling no emotional need to participate. Their self-concept is often built through long-term consistency rather than short-term validation. While many people use trends to test identities or gain belonging, these individuals prefer continuity over experimentation driven by social pressure. This gives them a sense of coherence that remains intact even when cultural narratives shift rapidly. As a result, hype does not feel like an opportunity, but more like background noise. Such people often learned early in life to trust their own judgment. This may come from environments where independence was encouraged or from experiences where following the crowd led to disappointment. Over time, this reinforced the idea that personal discernment is safer and more meaningful than collective excitement. Their psychological reward system becomes linked to authenticity rather than popularity. They also tend to value depth over visibility. Social hype is usually fast, loud, and designed for maximum exposure, while these individuals prefer slow understanding and private satisfaction. This difference in value orientation makes hype feel misaligned with their emotional priorities. Instead of feeling excluded, they often feel relieved not to participate. Another important aspect is their comfort with standing alone. Many people fear social isolation, which makes hype attractive as a shortcut to inclusion. Those who resist hype often have a higher tolerance for social distance and do not equate solitude with failure. This emotional independence reduces the pressure to conform. Their autonomy is not always conscious or ideological. Often, it simply feels natural to pause, evaluate, and decide independently. They may even be surprised when others assume they are making a statement by opting out. In reality, they are just following what feels internally consistent. This inner direction can sometimes be misunderstood by others as coldness or arrogance. However, psychologically, it is more accurate to see it as self-trust. They do not need constant reinforcement from shared excitement to feel secure in themselves. Their sense of worth is internally generated. Because of this, they are often less reactive to social reward and punishment systems. Likes, trends, and collective enthusiasm do not strongly influence their emotional state. This makes their behavior appear stable across different social contexts. They change when they want to, not when the crowd does. Ultimately, autonomy and identity form the psychological foundation that allows these individuals to remain outside social hype without distress. Their independence is not an absence of social awareness, but a presence of inner clarity. This clarity acts as a filter through which hype simply does not pass. People who avoid social hype often display a cognitive style that emphasizes critical thinking and pattern recognition. They naturally question why something is popular and what mechanisms are driving collective enthusiasm. Rather than being swept up emotionally, they analyze the structure behind the trend. This mental distance reduces the emotional pull of hype. Their skepticism is not necessarily cynical but curious and evaluative. They tend to ask whether a trend offers real value or simply emotional stimulation. This questioning mindset slows down their response to social movements. By the time they have processed the information, the hype may already feel empty or overstated. They are often sensitive to exaggeration and emotional manipulation. Many social trends rely on urgency, fear of missing out, or inflated promises. Individuals who resist hype tend to notice these psychological levers quickly. Once recognized, the emotional impact weakens significantly. Another cognitive trait is a preference for complexity over simplicity. Social hype usually reduces ideas into easily digestible messages. These individuals, however, are more comfortable holding nuanced perspectives. When a trend feels overly simplified, it fails to engage their interest. They may also have a long-term orientation in their thinking. Instead of focusing on immediate excitement, they consider lasting consequences and deeper implications. This temporal distance makes short-lived trends seem less relevant. What matters to them is what remains meaningful after the excitement fades. Their information processing style often includes selective attention. They are not constantly scanning for what is popular, which reduces exposure to hype in the first place. By choosing what they consume, they protect their mental space from constant stimulation. This selective approach reinforces their independence. Many of them also value evidence over consensus. Just because many people believe something does not make it convincing to them. They look for personal understanding rather than social agreement. This makes majority opinion psychologically weak as a motivator. Their skepticism can also be a form of emotional self-protection. Hype often leads to disappointment when reality fails to match expectations. By remaining cautious, they avoid emotional highs and lows driven by collective illusions. Stability becomes more appealing than excitement. This cognitive distance allows them to observe social behavior almost anthropologically. They notice how emotions spread, how language shifts, and how identities are temporarily reshaped. Instead of participating, they study. This observational stance further reinforces their separation from hype. In essence, their cognitive style filters social excitement through analysis, skepticism, and long-term thinking. By the time hype reaches them, it has lost much of its power. What remains is information, not emotional compulsion. Emotionally, people who do not join social hype often have a strong capacity for self-regulation. They are less dependent on external stimulation to feel engaged or alive. Their emotional world is relatively stable, which reduces the appeal of intense collective emotions. Hype, for them, can feel overwhelming rather than energizing. They often find meaning in personal routines, private goals, or small, consistent pleasures. Because fulfillment comes from within their own lives, they do not seek emotional amplification through social movements. This makes hype feel unnecessary rather than tempting. Emotional sufficiency replaces emotional craving. Belonging, for these individuals, is usually selective rather than mass-oriented. They may prefer deep connections with a few people over shared excitement with many. Social hype often offers a sense of belonging without intimacy, which feels shallow to them. They value quality of connection over quantity. Their emotional independence allows them to tolerate being out of sync with others. When friends or colleagues are excited about a trend, they do not feel pressure to match that emotional state. They can remain calm without feeling disconnected. This emotional autonomy supports their behavioral independence. They also tend to process emotions internally before expressing them. Social hype encourages immediate emotional expression and public alignment. These individuals, however, need time to feel something genuinely. By the time an emotion forms, the social moment may have passed. Many of them associate hype with emotional volatility. Sudden excitement followed by collective disillusionment feels exhausting. To protect emotional balance, they instinctively avoid these cycles. Calm continuity becomes more attractive than emotional peaks. Their sense of meaning is often existential rather than social. Instead of asking what everyone is doing, they ask what feels true or worthwhile. This internal meaning-making process reduces reliance on external narratives. Hype does not answer their deeper questions. They may also have a high tolerance for emotional neutrality. Not feeling excited does not bother them. While others may interpret neutrality as boredom, for them it is a comfortable emotional state. This reduces the urge to seek stimulation through trends. Emotionally, they are less driven by fear of exclusion. Missing out does not register as a threat to their identity or happiness. Because of this, hype loses one of its strongest emotional weapons. There is nothing to fear in opting out. Ultimately, their emotional regulation, selective belonging, and internal sense of meaning create a psychological environment where social hype cannot easily take root. They are not resisting excitement but choosing emotional coherence. In that coherence, hype simply has no function. People who never join social hype often occupy a unique social position that is shaped by distance rather than participation. They are present within society but not absorbed by its dominant emotional currents. This positioning allows them to move through social spaces without being fully claimed by group identities. Psychologically, this creates a sense of quiet independence that does not seek attention yet subtly alters how power and influence are experienced around them. Because they are not driven by trends, they are harder to predict and harder to manipulate. Social hype often functions as a tool of influence, guiding behavior through repetition and emotional pressure. Individuals who remain outside these dynamics are less responsive to such tools. This can unconsciously shift power balances, as they are not easily mobilized, persuaded, or emotionally steered by collective narratives. Their independence can provoke mixed reactions from others. Some people feel intrigued by their detachment, interpreting it as confidence or depth. Others feel discomfort as non-participation can be perceived as silent non-approval. Psychologically, hype depends on shared reinforcement, and those who do not echo it disrupt the feedback loop simply by existing outside it. In group settings, these individuals often become observers rather than performers. They notice how status is negotiated through trend alignment and how approval is exchanged through shared enthusiasm. This awareness gives them social insight without requiring active involvement. Their understanding of group behavior often exceeds that of those fully immersed in it. They also tend to resist hierarchical pressure based on popularity. In many social systems, value is assigned according to visibility and alignment with what is trending. By not participating, they implicitly reject these value systems. Their self-worth is not calibrated by social ranking, which grants them psychological freedom from comparison. This distance from hype can create a form of silent authority. Because they do not seek validation, their approval when given carries weight. Others may unconsciously sense that their opinions are not performative. This can make their words feel grounded and credible, even when spoken quietly. At the same time, their position is not without cost. Choosing not to engage can lead to exclusion from certain conversations or opportunities built around trends. However, psychologically, they often accept this trade-off consciously or intuitively. Access without authenticity feels more costly than exclusion with integrity. They also tend to navigate social spaces with flexible boundaries. They can enter collective moments when meaningful and exit when they feel artificial. This fluidity contrasts with the rigidity of hype-driven belonging, which often demands constant reinforcement. Their ability to disengage without guilt reflects strong internal boundaries. Over time, this positioning allows them to build parallel social paths. Instead of moving with the crowd, they move alongside it, forming connections based on shared values rather than shared excitement. These relationships may be fewer but often prove more stable and resilient. Social depth replaces social breadth. In the broader psychological landscape, people who never join social hype represent an alternative mode of social existence. They show that participation is not mandatory for belonging, and silence can coexist with presence. Their independence quietly challenges the assumption that meaning must be collective and loud, proving that power, identity, and fulfillment can also emerge from standing slightly apart.